Hello everyone! Before this video begins, I have a few things to announce. First of all, thank you all so much for helping me reach 8,000 subscribers. It has been a goal of mine for years and it genuinely means the world. Secondly, I have promised myself that once I reach this milestone, I will begin a Patreon. Which is what I did. You can check it out in the video's description. And thank you so much to everyone who already joined that. Lastly, whilst this video is one of my sillier ones in recent memory, it is also one that gets very dark very quickly. For a list of content warnings, please look into the video's description. Thank you. Hi, my name is Annie the Multiversal Librarian, and my goal is to learn all about the many stories of Magic the Gathering. One of the main complaints I get when trying to tell people about Magic's story is that it's too complicated. Every story starts off simple until a question like, "Yo, Annie, who's this Urza guy you've been talking about for the last half an hour?" And suddenly it's 2 AM and you've been listening to me talk about Yawgmoth for the past hour and a half. If staying up until 2 AM listening to me talk about Yawgmoth is what your heart desires, there's a video. It's pretty good. You should check it out. Magic's story is large, both in terms of the quantity of it, but also in terms of the story. Some of Magic's biggest events take place over thousands of years and involve many a god battling one another. As a result, it is easy for even us as readers to feel confused, to feel as if we are nothing but playthings for some higher power. Which is why today I would like to talk about someone who has defied this idea. Someone who was by all means intended to be nothing but God's plaything, and said no, and went on to become one of Dominaria's greatest heroes, and outlived a lot of those gods in the process. Today we are talking about Squee, the goblin who defied God. Cry about it. I'm so sassy today. I don't know when this happened. How you doing, honey? As I've said, Squee was originally intended to be nothing but a piece of comedic relief on the skyship Weatherlight. This is evident from the very story of his birth. Squee is canonically named after the sounds his mother made during birth. Try and get that one out of your head when you cast him next time. It's not easy. Squee's goofy identity is also helped by the fact that he is a goblin. If you're familiar with Magic's goblins, you'll know that they are mostly the punching bag of the multiverse. If the multiverse is one big joke, a notion growing increasingly more real for me as of late, goblins are the punchline of it. Squee was first properly introduced in the Rath and Storm novel, where he served alongside such names as Captain Sisse or Gerard White Boy Savior Capuchin. Yes, I am a passionate Gerard hater. If you want an explanation, let me know. In Rath and Storm, Squee doesn't really do very much. He mostly does the very fitting squealing, and also activates something called the Salvation Sphere. This is a toy which you can see him depicted with on most of his cards, and it is one that is of unknown power at this time. It gets a bunch of skeletons off of his and Gerard Capuchin's back, but at this point it's mostly a Deus Ex Machina type deal where they're like, oh no, how are we wrote ourselves into a corner. Put a sphere in there. What makes it even stranger is that the sphere is never mentioned again after this. Okay, that's a lie. If you're familiar with Squee's story, if you're a true Squee connoisseur, a Squeenosaur, if you will know that the Salvation Sphere does make one more appearance, but it's never mentioned again until the end of the invasion cycle, which is a long time to go without mentioning something that seems so important in this moment. At this point in the story, Squee seemed both harmless and useless as a sidekick on a Weatherlight. However, that will quickly begin to change as the crew crash landed on another plane, Mercadia. As I've said already, goblins in the greater Magic canon, not very respected, very much exploited. Put that on a shirt, that's a pretty good slogan. This is true for most goblins in Magic's canon. Unfortunately, it seems to be sort of their universal position on most planes. But not on Mercadia. The Kieran Goblin of Mercadia are actually the ruling race of the plane, which is very interesting. And whilst I'm trying to avoid my tangents as much as I can in this video, we need to go on one to explain this. Frankly, I think that Peter Archer or Francis Lebrun, the author of Mercadian Masques, did a phenomenal job explaining why goblins are the ruling race on Mercadia. And to explain why, we need to go some 10,000 years back to the rise of Yawgmoth. Yawgmoth was originally a human and a dictator on Dominaria. The way he gained power was by imprisoning, torturing, killing, you know, whatever Yawgmoth does on an average Tuesday, to his political rivals. This resulted in the planeswalker Defied taking a bunch of the elders, the sort of ruling body of Dominaria at the time, onto another plane to keep them from Yawgmoth's wrath. She basically took them and a bunch of enslaved goblins and was like, hey, here's this place, it's called Mercadia, be glad that I took you there because I'm leaving now, and also treat your goblins nicely because they got way better survival skills than you do. And then Defied disappeared, and without spoiling too much, she never came back. But she was right. The goblins of Mercadia were clearly much better suited for survival there than the humans, and they became the ruling race of the plane. Now, back to the present, this is pretty funny. Given that Squee is treated by the entire crew of Weatherlight as a nuisance, it's pretty interesting to see him suddenly be in a position of power. He doesn't look exactly like the Mercadian Kieran, but he looks close enough that everyone is sort of scared of his power and treats him very nicely on the plane. There's a funny part where he trips over a soldier and then claims to have gotten foot fungus, and the soldiers are like, we gotta check the Squee feet now. He also utilizes his power very well. I will not sit here and pretend that Squee is some sort of a genius thinker, but he utilizes his new position here to free Gerard Capuchin out of jail and various shenanigans at least like 3 to 5 times. And what does he get for this? He gets punched in the face by a drunk Gerard. How typical. I'm a passionate Gerard hater. Goddamn. Squee also uncovers a plot by the Phyrexian Volrath to steal Weatherlight and create a bunch of similar ships to invade Dominaria with. For his efforts here, he of course gets tortured. I can't get too mad here because that's like Volrath's deal. And look at the guy. That's the guy who tortures, alright? Thankfully, the crew of Weatherlight comes to Squee's rescue, and they all fly out of Mercadia, having one last face-off with Volrath, during which, as per usual, Squee comes to the rescue. And he manages to shoot down Volrath. This is something that he does not shut up about in Invasion. He's mostly like, Squee, kill Volrath for you. And that's how you treat him? That's sort of the vibe. But genuinely, Squee does not get enough appreciation for this. Like, he legit shoots down Volrath. And the crew really, like, I'm just gonna say it, y'all need to put more respect on Squee's name. Just cause bro eats bugs doesn't mean he ain't a real one. Tapping into my frat boy persona here. Why not? But with all of that, and a great deal of accomplishments behind him, Squee, once again alongside the crew of Weatherlight, blasts back off onto Dominaria, where an invasion is beginning. Wait, let me do the thing. And with all those great deeds behind him, Squee, once again with the Weatherlight crew, blasts off onto Dominaria, where an invasion is happening. I have made it no secret in the past, and I'll make it no secret now, I am not a big fan of the Invasion novels. They're not like the worst thing I've ever read, that's Prophecy, but they do consist of like a lot of fighting and it really gets boring fast. Everyone on the crew of Weatherlight is pretty much just firing their cannons and killing Phyrexians. I mean, the first chapter of this book is literally called To Kill Phyrexians, and it really sets the tone for like everything that's going to be happening for the next 3 books. Is it seriously called To Kill Phyrexians? To Fight Phyrexians. Oh damn, I nearly spread misinformation on the internet there. Better be careful with me. So everyone is just shooting the Phyrexians, and so is Squee. There is the odd funny moment, like when he distracts a guard by letting him cuff him over and over, but because he has really skinny hands, the cuffs always fall off, and you know, that's pretty funny. There's also the classy bit where they're all in prison and they're trying to pry the lock open, and Squee is like kind of a little guy, so he slips through the bars of the jail and like tries to open it from the outside, and they're like, no, get the keys, they're right there, and he's like, no, I'm gonna do this, and they're like, no, Squee, get the keys, and you know, class comedy. He also farts, but I never thought that's particularly funny. I don't know. Sorry, J. Robert King. It's not a Minions movie. Well, in any case, damn, that was harsh. I would love to interview J. Robert King someday. That's kind of, I will not be surprised if he rejects my interview after that one. That's completely valid. So Squee generally engages in shenanigans on Dominaria until they go to invade Krovax's fortress. Now Krovax is a... I am unstoppable. Y'all can guess what I'm gonna do now. So Squee engages in the general fighting for a while, until they all go to invade Krovax's stronghold. Now Krovax is a former member of the Weatherlight crew who has been converted into a Phyrexian, and he is joined by Urtai, who is also a former member of the Weatherlight crew and has also been turned into a Phyrexian. Both Urtai and Krovax are actually like super interesting characters. Like someday when I have a bit more time, I really want to make a video on the story of Nemesis, because it is like an absolutely beautiful story. But for now, all we need to know about Urtai is that he has a big ego, thinks of himself as really smart, and really doesn't like Squee because of this. Because Squee gets to stay alive somehow. But Urtai had to get Phyrexianized. Anyway, now they're all going to invade Krovax's stronghold. They're actually doing pretty well. They defeat the enemy flagship Predator. They defeat Grevan Ilvek, which is like one of the big villains of Magic Story. And they all think it's gonna be fine. But then Urtai appears, who has been invisible, and he's like, gotcha. And he takes Gerard into the stronghold. He also takes Squee, because Squee was holding onto Gerard's leg, and teleportation, yada yada. So now they're all in Krovax's chambers. And we once again gotta go on a tangent. And Krovax serves Yawgmoth, as do all Phyrexians. And Yawgmoth wants to own Gerard. He wants Gerard alive and on his side. But of course Gerard, you know, being the white boy savior hero that he is like, no, I will not serve Yawgmoth. And Krovax is like, oh, really? That's very interesting. And he shows Gerard that Yawgmoth has the power to bring the dead back to life. This interests Gerard because his love, Hannah, has earlier withered from a Phyrexian plague, and she is very hurt, and trans Gerard. And he is very hurt by this. The way he demonstrates this to Gerard is that he has Squee killed by his own goblin servants. And then he asks Yawgmoth to bring Squee back to life, which he does. And Gerard is like, okay, I give up. I don't have the strength to do this anymore. I'm going to Phyrexia. Now, if you want to know what happens there, it's a whole shebang. What do you call it when two men fight to the death in hell? I like the word shebang, you see. If you want to know how this all comes together on Phyrexia with Gerard, I recommend you check out my current video. There is a specific part where I talk about just this. It'll be linked in the description. So Gerard leaves off to Phyrexia, and Squee, who has been killed again shortly after being brought back to life, comes back to life again. And Krovax is like, "Oh, Lord Yawgmoth, you are so grateful for my assistance. You have given me someone I can kill over and over again." Krovax is a vampire and feeds off death. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll kill this goblin 100 times a day. Praise Yawgmoth." This is the part where it gets really dark. Squee gets killed probably like 100+ times, while all the other Weatherlight crew members sort of goof around in Dominaria. But eventually, Gerard comes back from Phyrexia. Long story short, Gerard has disobeyed Yawgmoth, which I guess surprises nobody. Gerard has killed Urza, now has his head in his hand, and he also has powers granted to him by Yawgmoth for the fight. He is super powerful, he's stronger than Krovax, and is here to challenge him. Unfortunately, Krovax isn't home, and so Gerard fights Urtai, and whilst Gerard is stronger, Urtai is smarter. And so he snares Gerard with a spell and is about to kill him when Squee appears. Yay! Aren't we all happy? And Squee attacks Urtai. Yeah, at this point Krovax comes into the throne room and is like, "Okay, I'm gonna fight Gerard." And Urtai's like, "Please let me kill the goblin. He has annoyed me long before I was a Phyrexian. Let me kill the guy." Which, you know, for all his big brain, Urtai clearly didn't realize that killing Squee is kind of impossible at this point. And so a chase begins, in which Urtai over and over casts various killing spells on Squee, like electrifying him, turning him to dust. Nothing works. Squee always comes back and is like, "Ayo, chief, try harder." Squee even manages to trip Urtai. I didn't realize, this is the first time I'm realizing this, like, Urtai is like a Phyrexian wizard with 4 arms, but he succumbs to like a shoe. And Urtai trips over and falls face first into one of his spells, causing a part of his face to get melted off. At which point he's like, "Okay, we gotta finish this." And he figures out that if he casts a death cloud on Squee, Squee might be coming back to life, but he's always just gonna inhale and die. So Urtai casts a death cloud and moves off to his infuser. He uses this Phyrexian infuser to bring himself like back to shape, and he goes to chill with that. But Squee had an idea. Squee realized pretty quickly what was happening and why he was dying over and over. And so he devised a strategy. Squee decided to hold his breath. I know, the boy's a genius. And what this results in is an absolutely amazing scene. Like, I don't think a lot of the humor throughout Invasion lands. This is like the funniest thing J. Robert King has ever written. I love it. There are like 5 or 6 paragraphs stacked on top of each other that are just like, Squee was walking. He couldn't hold his breath anymore. He took a breath and died. Squee woke up and he decided not to breathe in ever again. But then he stubbed his toe and he breathed in. Squee woke up again. So that's kind of how the story goes. And one interesting thing is that because Squee dies quite regularly at this point, he knows what the afterlife looks like. And the afterlife of his looks like a huge bug feast. It is a huge red-lit room that's just covered. There's a huge table filled with bugs. But every time he wants to take a bite out of a bug, he's catapulted back into life. And so, in his sort of delirious state, being somewhere between life and death and a death cloud, Squee doesn't realize that he's still alive when he wanders into a red-lit room with a huge bug on the table. And he's like, I guess I'm gonna try and take a bite again. It's weird that it's not little bugs, it's one big bug, but hey. He also notes the bug being particularly ugly, So he takes a bite, and it is this point that he realizes two things. The bug is alive, and it's in fact not a bug. It's Urtai, resting on his red glowing mana infuser. So Urtai gets really angry, but Squee's like, I'm just gonna supercharge your diffuser, and Urtai gets turned to ash. At which point Squee's like, should've left some bugs for me in the afterlife, bitch. And walks out. Afterwards, he rejoins forces with Gerard, and together they rejoin forces with the Weatherlight. But Squee's heroic deeds are not over yet, because Yawgmoth is here. After preparing for like 9,000 years, Yawgmoth has decided to enter Dominaria. He enters it as like this huge killing cloud, it's a whole thing, and he seems unstoppable. He rules all that is dead. From dead plants, dead soil, dead people, he owns it all. He kills with his mere presence. It seems like an impossible fight. The crew of Weatherlight tries a few things to get rid of Yawgmoth, none of which fully work. And Squee actually has like an idea that thankfully no one decided to go through with, but which I think speaks to the fact that Squee is said to be a genius among goblins, and I genuinely think he's way smarter than he gets credit for. Squee comes up with this idea. So Squee can't die. So if they just take Squee and throw him at Yawgmoth over and over again, logically Squee has to win eventually, right? And whilst this is like obviously not gonna work, probably because Yawgmoth has the power to undo his own immortality spell, my dude just came up with a unstoppable force, immovable object type thing here. I think it's quite clever. What they actually end up going with is using the Eyes of Urza Planeswalker combined with the strength of Gerard Capuchin, combined with like the entire Legacy collection of artifacts. Also Karn is there. But yeah, they create like this huge blast. They blast Yawgmoth into oblivion. And everyone's happy. Not really. The crew of Weatherlight is panicking for at least a bit, because they now start plummeting out of the sky into the ground. Thankfully they land in a lake, and everyone is okay. Except for Squee, whose neck is snapped by the impact. And everyone is like, oh no. Yawgmoth's gone. Squee is not gonna come back anymore, right? At which point Squee comes back and is like, Yawgmoth, you dumb motherfucker. Should have fixed yourself up as good as you fixed me. And he rides off into the sunset on the Weatherlight, and it is beautiful. Obama's there and he's cheering. It truly is a beautiful moment, and would be a wonderful conclusion to the story of Squee. But of course, as he is immortal, the story of Squee continued. Some 300 to 400 years later, we get back to the story of Squee, who has been engaging in all sorts of tomfoolery for the last 300 to 400 years. He has become a king of the goblins, which he has done a great way, by the way. Squee saw his people getting abused by a goblin tyrant, and decided to challenge this tyrant to a fight. Squee has utilized a tactic which he has learned during pit fighting, where he lets his opponent kill him over and over again until they are so exhausted or so angry that they get a heart attack, like in this case. Through which Squee has become the de facto king of the goblins, and the goblins have prospered under Squee. I don't know if this is explicitly said or if it's just something that like is implied, but it's implied that they have like this Simpsons type sign of like 3 days without an accident thing, and they reset it every time someone dies. And Squee has been making sure that their fatalities stay at record lows. Squee even still has the Salvation Sphere as a little relic of his invasion days. The story also showcases something pretty important. You know how I mentioned that Squee doesn't get nearly enough respect from the Weatherlight crew? Squee has apparently been cut out of most recordings of Dominarian history of the invasion. What the hell, guys? Squee was so relevant in the invasion. As revenge, he now, as the only still living member of the Weatherlight crew, tells everyone that he defeated Yawgmoth, which frankly is pretty fair and awesome. Anyways, the goblins are having a great time until it is revealed that the Phyrexians, 400 years since their original defeat, have returned. In what I suppose felt like a great deal of poetic justice, Urtai was actually resurrected by the Praetor Shieldred and has been sent to get Squee, as well as the Salvation Sphere, which seems to be of much greater importance than anyone realized back in the original invasion. Urtai takes Squee and turns him into a Phyrexian. Now, while Squee's immortality is still present here, he doesn't technically die. He just gets all his blood replaced with oil, flesh replaced with metal. It's difficult to save him past this point. The Salvation Sphere, however, still clings to him. It becomes a part of his new Phyrexian design for a full 15 minutes. Because, as it happens, a rock falls on him, and Squee dies for real. At which point it is revealed that the Salvation Sphere has been housing the cosmic entity of salvation this entire time, and Squee, having died under truly special circumstances, is finally able to talk with her. Squee is once again in the Red Room of the Afterlife, filled with bugs, but this time he can actually take a bite without being thrown back into life. Salvation, or Sally, as he likes to call her, appears, takes on the form of Captain Sisse to make Squee a little more comfortable, and is like, hey, I have noticed that you seem to be getting tired of immortality. I admit it is something that I have bestowed upon you without your knowledge. Yawgmoth's spell was only meant to preserve your body, but have no effect on your soul. You're basically supposed to go insane. But thanks to me and my powers of salvation, I have protected your soul. And she makes him an offer. Squee is either allowed to die, finally stay in the afterlife and have an endless bug feast forever. Or, alternatively, she will send him back to Earth, fully functional and once again immortal. At which point, Squee is like, Sally, let's strike a deal. Squee was truly getting tired of his immortality. He has made it a habit for when he's too lazy to walk downstairs to just jump off a balcony, splatter on the ground to much amusement of his goblins, and piece himself back together. As he puts it, he's tired of being appreciated for the one thing that he got by accident. I'm nobody's accident. I'm my own accident. And he asks Salvation to set him back on Dominaria, but just once. Once again, as a mortal goblin. He wants to enjoy the joy of thinking he's going to die, realizing he didn't, and laughing with joy. And that is what I believe he's still doing. Seeing a rock fall on him, noticing it fell just short of his body, and laughing with joy. Such is the story of Squee. Thank you for watching. And for the first time in the history of this channel, thank you so much to my very first patron, Samantha Wiggins. Thank you for finding the time and resources to support what I do. Thank you for being a valuable member of the Discord, and for being a good friend. Being a good friend is not included in the Patreon package. Samantha's just pretty awesome. So yeah, hope you all have a nice rest of your day, and see you in the next one, where we'll talk about Sagante.